Tonight, we will explore a collection of stories and ancient teachings from the Zen Buddhist tradition. We will look at what happens when we loosen our grip on what we think we know, when we learn to see the people we love with fresh eyes, and when we let ourselves rest in the quiet mystery of simply being alive. Before we begin, feel free to share what time it is and where you are listening from. There is an old teaching that says we are like the ocean. Not the waves on the surface, not the ripples that come and go. We are the ocean itself, vast, patient, and always whole. And yet, so often, we forget. We get caught up in the small waves of our thinking and our worrying, and we mistake those waves for everything there is. Tonight, through tales and quiet reflections, we will discover, gently, that every time we let go of something familiar, something peaceful and wide is already here, waiting for us. There is no effort needed. Just your willingness to listen and to let these words carry you, the way water carries a leaf. So settle in. Let your body soften. Let your breath find its own rhythm. And when you are ready, let us begin this journey together. There is a saying, often shared in the old monasteries, that goes something like this: the fish in the lake does not know it lives in water. It has never known anything else. The water is so close, so constant, so everywhere, that it has become invisible. And so the fish swims through its days believing that what it sees is all there is. In many ways, we are like that fish. We swim through our routines, our habits, our familiar thoughts, and we rarely stop to wonder whether the life we are living is the whole of life, or just a small corner of something much larger. The Buddha once spoke of how rare and precious it is to be born as a human being. He compared it to a blind turtle swimming in a vast ocean, surfacing once every 100 years, and somehow placing its head through a single golden ring floating on the surface. That is how unlikely this life is, he said. That is how precious this moment is. And yet, most of us move through our days as if we had an endless supply of them. We settle into the familiar. We build our routines. We arrange our small comforts around us. And slowly, without even noticing, the world gets a little smaller. Tonight, let us explore a story about three fish and the very different choices they made when the world they knew began to change. Once, long ago, there was a lake. It was not a grand lake. It was simply a quiet lake, tucked between green hills, fed by a small stream that came down from the mountains. The water was clear and cool. Reeds grew along the edges. In the mornings, mist would rise from the surface and hang softly over the water, and in the evenings, the sky would turn warm and the whole lake would go quiet. It was a peaceful place. In this lake, there lived three fish. The first fish was wise. Not wise in the way of knowing many things, but wise in the way of paying attention. It noticed small changes in the water. It watched the birds and understood what their movements meant. It had a willingness to see things as they were, even when what it saw was uncomfortable. The second fish was clever. It could think its way through most problems. But it had a habit of seeing what needed to be done and then hesitating, waiting for a better moment, a clearer sign, a little more certainty before acting. The third fish was a creature of comfort. It loved the lake. It loved the familiar stones along the bottom, the way the light fell through the water at noon. It could not imagine being anywhere else. For a long time, the three fish lived together peacefully. The days passed gently. Nothing seemed to change. But one morning, The wise fish noticed something along the far shore. Figures were moving there, carrying something between them. Something long and thin that caught the light. Nets. The wise fish understood, with a knowing that came from somewhere deeper than thought, that something had changed. The world it knew was no longer safe. For a moment, it thought about swimming to the others. But then a quieter feeling arose. They love this place, it thought. They call it home. If I go to them now, their comfort will weaken my resolve. There is a teaching that says, it is right to love your home, but first ask yourself, where is home, really? And so the wise fish turned toward the narrow stream that connected the lake to the river beyond, and it began to swim. It was not an easy journey. The stream was narrow and shallow in places. The current pushed against it. There were rocks to get around, and stretches where the water barely covered its body. The wise fish grew tired. There were moments when the memory of the lake called to it. Come back, the memory seemed to say. You are comfortable here. You were safe, but the wise fish kept going. Not because it was especially brave, but because it understood that the safety of the lake was no longer real. It was just a memory of safety. And holding on to a memory, no matter how nice it feels, is not the same as being truly alive. The stream widened into a river. The river deepened, and after a long, difficult passage, the wise fish felt something it had never felt before. The water opened up in every direction. There were no edges, no walls, no bottom it could see. It had reached the sea, and in that moment, something inside the wise fish simply let go. All the effort, all the fear, all the holding on. What was left was a feeling so wide and so quiet that there were really no words for it. Just a deep sense of having arrived. Not at a place, but at a truth it had somehow always known. Back in the lake, the second fish watched the wise fish disappear into the stream. And as the ripples settled, it felt a familiar sting. I should have gone, it thought. I saw the same signs. I knew what was coming, but I waited. I turned it over in my mind one too many times. The nets were closer now. The clever fish could see them spreading through the shallows. What can I do? It thought. The stream is too far. The nets are between me and the way out. And then an idea came. A strange one. If I cannot escape by swimming, it thought, perhaps I can escape by stillness. And so the clever fish did something bold. It turned its belly toward the sky and floated to the surface. It let its whole body go limp. It drifted among the reeds and fallen leaves, looking for all the world like a fish whose journey was already over. One of the figures waded over and lifted it from the water. The clever fish felt the grip around its body. Every instinct told it to thrash and fight, but it did not move. It lay perfectly still, trusting its own stillness completely. The figure looked at it, turned it over, and then tossed it aside toward the muddy bank with a shake of the head. The clever fish lay in the wet grass for a few breaths. And then, slowly and carefully, it rolled itself toward the water's edge and slipped back in. It had survived. Not through speed or force, but through letting go. There is an old teaching that speaks to this. It says, let go of who you think you are and discover who you have always been. The clever fish had touched the edge of that truth. Not perfectly, but enough to know that surrender is not the same as giving up. Sometimes it is the most courageous thing we can do. And then there was the third fish, the one who loved the lake more than anything. When the nets began to close, it did what many of us do when we feel trapped. It panicked. It darted this way and that, trying to outswim the danger with speed and effort. But the nets were patient. They did not hurry. They just kept closing in, quietly and steadily. And at last, the third fish was caught. It could not move. In that stillness, a single clear thought arose. If I ever find my way free, it thought, I will never again live within the limits of a lake. Next time, the ocean. Next time, I will make the infinite my home. Each of us carries something of all three fish within us. A part that sees clearly and finds the courage to move towards something larger. A part that understands but hesitates. And a part that loves the familiar so much that it would rather stay in a shrinking world than step into the unknown. None of these parts are wrong. They are simply the different voices within us, each doing its best. But there is a quiet invitation in this story. It asks us to notice, gently, where we are living from. To ask ourselves, am I swimming in a lake and calling it the whole ocean? The Buddha taught that we suffer when we cling, when we hold tightly to what is familiar, to our ideas about how things should be. Not because those things are bad, but because they are not the whole of what we are. And when we mistake a small part for the whole, something inside us knows. We feel the walls, even when we cannot name them. There is a line from the Zen tradition that says, the whole moon and the entire sky are reflected in one dewdrop on the grass. The whole moon, the entire sky, held in something so small you could miss it if you were not paying attention. This is how it is with our lives. Each moment, no matter how ordinary, holds something infinite within it. We do not need to escape our lives to find what is vast and open. We only need to stop swimming in circles long enough to feel the depth that is already beneath us. It takes courage to make the infinite our home. Not the courage of grand gestures, but the quiet, ordinary courage of letting go, of softening our grip on what we think we know, of trusting that when we stop clinging to the edges of the lake, we will not be lost. We will be found. The ocean is not a destination. It is what we discover when we finally stop grasping and let ourselves rest in what is already here. Let us pause here for a moment. Notice how you are feeling. Let your breath be soft and easy. And when you are ready, we will continue together. So we have been thinking about lakes and oceans, about the courage it takes to let go of what is small and familiar and trust something larger. And there is perhaps no place where this matters more than in how we see the people closest to us. The Buddha said something very simple about this. He said, in the end, only three things matter: how much you loved, how gently you lived, and how gracefully you let go of things not meant for you. How much you loved, not how much you thought about love, not how much you planned for it, or worried about it, or tried to get it right. Just how much you loved. And here is the tender part. Most of us want to love the people in our lives well. We really do. But something gets in the way. Something quiet and persistent that we barely notice. We stop seeing them. Not with our eyes. Our eyes still work fine. But somewhere along the way, we replace the living, breathing person in front of us with a story we have written about them. And then, without realizing it, We start relating to the story instead of the person. Let us explore what this looks like. There is a story about two people who had been together for a long time. They cared about each other. That was never the question. But somewhere over the years, something had gone quiet between them. A kind of distance had crept in so slowly that neither of them noticed it at first. It was just there one day, like a piece of furniture they had stopped seeing. One of them had been doing a lot of inner work, quietly, on their own, reading, reflecting, sitting with difficult feelings they had avoided for years. And slowly, genuinely, they had changed. They were softer now, more open, more willing to listen without defending themselves. But when they came home each evening and sat across from their partner, something strange kept happening. Their partner would respond to them the way they used to be. The old patterns would surface, the familiar tensions, the same careful distance. It was as if there were two of them in the room, the person they actually were, and the older version their partner was still expecting to see. One evening, the one who had changed finally said something about it. They were sitting together after dinner, the house quiet around them. "Can I tell you something?" they said. "Something I have been noticing." "Of course," said their partner. "I feel like you are still talking to the person I was 3 years ago. Like you are waiting for me to react the way I used to. But I am not that person anymore. I have changed. And I think you have not quite noticed." Their partner sat with this for a long time. They did not get defensive. They just sat with it. "I think you might be right," they said finally. "But I do not know how to see you differently. I keep expecting the old version of you. It is like my mind has made a picture of who you are, and I keep looking at the picture instead of looking at you." "Yes," said the one who had changed, gently. "That is exactly what it feels like." There was a silence between them. But it was not the old, uncomfortable kind of silence. It was a new kind, an honest kind. The kind of silence that happens when two people are actually seeing each other, maybe for the first time in a very long while. This is such a common thing between people. It happens in families, between old friends, between parents and children who have grown up but are still being treated as if they were small. We build a picture of someone, and then we hold on to that picture long after the person has changed. And here is what makes it so tender. When we keep treating someone as if they are still the person they used to be, it can actually pull them back into those old patterns. Our expectations become a kind of gravity. We draw the people we love back into shapes they have outgrown, not because we mean to, but because we are not paying close enough attention to who they are right now. It is worth sitting with this for a moment. Think of someone in your life, someone you know well. When you bring them to mind, what comes up? Is it them, right now, as they actually are today? Or is it a collection of moments and memories? Things they said once, ways they behaved years ago, a feeling you have carried about them for so long that it has become invisible, like water to a fish. We do this with almost everyone. We carry these little stories around, and the stories sit between us and the actual person like a kind of fog. We see the fog and think we are seeing them. There is a Zen teaching that says, in the beginner's mind there are many possibilities, but in the expert's mind there are few. We become experts on the people we love. We think we know them so well, and that knowing, that certainty, is exactly what keeps us from seeing them fresh. There is a quieter layer to this, too. too. It is not just other people we do this with. We do it to ourselves. Think about how many of us carry an old story about who we are. Maybe it is a story about a time we tried something and it did not work out. A job we did not get. A relationship that ended. A moment when we felt we were not enough. And then, because we carry that story, we move through our lives, bracing for it to happen again. We hold back. We play it safe. We do not let ourselves be fully open to this moment, because we are still flinching from a moment that has already passed. There is a story about a person who had once spoken up at an important gathering and been embarrassed by how it went. The words came out wrong. People stared. For years afterwards, every time they were in a room full of people and had something to say, they felt that old tightness rise in their chest. The words would form in their mind, and then the memory would step in front of them, like a guard at a door, and they would stay quiet. It was not that they had nothing to offer. They had a great deal to offer. But the story was louder than the present moment. The echo was louder than the music. The Buddha had a word for this kind of holding. He called it attachment. Not attachment to things, necessarily, but attachment to our ideas about how things are, to our version of the story. And he taught that this attachment, more than almost anything else, is what keeps us from being free. Not because the stories are bad, but because they are old. They are echoes. And we cannot hear what is happening right now if we are still listening to something that ended long ago. There is a story from the Zen tradition about a teacher who would greet the same student every single morning with the same question. "Who are you today?" At first, the student found this amusing, then annoying. "You know who I am," the student said one morning. "I have been here for 2 years. You see me every day." The teacher just smiled. "I know who you were yesterday," the teacher said. "But I do not know who you are today." "Neither do you." The student started to argue, but then stopped. Something about it landed. The teacher was not being difficult. The teacher was being honest. The student from yesterday was gone. The person standing here this morning was someone new. Someone who had lived one more day, dreamed one more night, and arrived here with a slightly different heart. And if that was true for the student, it was true for everyone. It was true for every person we think we know. There is a way of being with people that the contemplative traditions point to again and again. It is so simple it almost sounds too easy. But it is one of the most powerful things you can do. You bring someone to mind, someone you know well, and then, very gently, you let go of everything you think you know about them. Every opinion, every memory, every expectation. You just let it all soften and fall away, like setting down a bag you have been carrying for a long time. And then you simply hold them in your awareness, not as a character in your story, not as someone who did this or said that, just as a living being. Here, now, as mysterious and unknowable as the ocean. It is a strange thing to do. And when you try it, you might notice something unexpected, a warmth that was not there before, a tenderness, as if, by letting go of your story about them, you have made room for something truer and kinder to take its place. We do not need to understand the people we love. We do not need to figure them out. We just need to keep seeing them, really seeing them, again and again and again. There is a line from an old teaching that goes, "Every being you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about." Be kind. We cannot know what is happening inside another person. We can only be willing to look. And that willingness, that simple, humble willingness to look without knowing, is perhaps the closest thing to love there is. The same ocean we spoke of earlier, the one the wise fish finally reached, is here too. It is in the space between you and the people you care about. Every time you let go of an old story and really see someone, you are stepping out of the lake and into something boundless. Every time you choose curiosity over certainty, softness over judgment, you are making the infinite your home. Not in some far-off, mystical way, but right here, in your kitchen, in your living room, in the quiet moment when someone you love walks through the door, and instead of reaching for the old familiar story, you simply look at them and let yourself be surprised. Let us pause here for a moment. Let your breath settle. Notice whatever is present. And when you are ready, we will continue together. One of the gifts of paying attention, of really being present with the people and moments in our lives, is that we start to notice beauty in places we never thought to look. Not the big, obvious kind of beauty. Not sunsets or mountaintops or the things we put on postcards. Something quieter than that. Something that hides in plain sight, tucked into the most ordinary corners of the most ordinary days. The Zen tradition has a wonderful way of pointing to this. A student once asked a teacher, "Where can I find the sacred?" And the teacher said, "Have you had your breakfast?" The student said, "Yes." "Then wash your bowl," said the teacher. That is it. The whole teaching, right there in a dirty bowl. Let us explore a story about an evening like that. An evening where something extraordinary was hiding inside something completely ordinary. There was a family, a parent and a child, who went out for a late dinner at a small restaurant one evening. They arrived so late that the kitchen was nearly finished for the night. The dining room was almost empty. The staff were beginning to clean up, wiping down tables, stacking chairs. It was that quiet in-between time when a place is not quite closed but not quite open either. They had a simple meal. Nothing special. The kind of dinner you forget about by the next morning. But as they were getting ready to leave, the child stopped in front of a fish tank near the entrance. It was a large tank, softly lit, with a few fish drifting around inside. And one of the fish was different from the others. It had one eye, just one, and it was enormous. It stuck out from the side of its head like a bright, round lantern, taking in everything. The fish was golden, vivid, almost glowing in the soft light of the tank. And it moved through the water with a kind of calm confidence, as if having one great eye instead of two small ones was not a problem at all. As if it was, in fact, a gift. The child pressed close to the glass. "Look at that," the child whispered. "Just that. Look at that." And then something lovely happened. A few of the young staff members noticed the child staring, and they came over. They were cheerful and bright-eyed, and they began to tell the story. "When we first got that fish," one of them said, "it was tiny. And it was black, not golden. And it had two eyes, just like all the others." "What happened?" asked the child. "Well," said another, laughing, "a few days after we put it in the tank, It got into a scrap with one of the bigger fish, and it lost one of its eyes. "Oh no," said the child, pressing closer to the glass. "But wait, said a third, waving a hand. "This is the good part." They were all gathered around the tank now, their cleaning rags forgotten, their faces lit up. About 2 weeks after that, it started to change color. First a little bit gold around the edges, then more and more, until one morning we came in and the whole fish was gold. Just like that. Black to gold. "And the eye," said the first one, pointing at the tank, the one it had left. It just kept growing. Bigger and bigger and bigger. Like it decided that if it was only going to have one eye, it was going to make it the best eye anyone had ever seen. They were all laughing now. Not in a mean way. In a way that was full of genuine delight. They thought this fish was the most wonderful thing in the world. You could see it in their faces. They were proud of it. They loved it. The child turned to the parent. "It is like a little warrior," the child said, very seriously, and then smiled. And for a few minutes, everyone in that quiet, nearly closed restaurant was connected. The parent, the child, the young staff members. They were all standing together around this small, glowing tank, looking at this strange and remarkable fish, and something in the air between them was warm and open and easy. Nobody was performing. Nobody was trying to impress anyone. Nobody was checking their phone or thinking about tomorrow. They were just there, together, in a moment of shared amazement. And then the moment passed, the way moments do. They said goodnight. They walked out into the cool air. The restaurant closed behind them, but something stayed. There is a phrase from an old poem that calls this feeling the arrows of shared impermanence. We are all here together in this brief, astonishing life. And when we really feel that, even for a moment, something melts between us. The walls come down. The separateness dissolves. We remember that we belong to each other. It does not take much. It does not require a temple or a retreat or a special occasion. It just takes a moment of real presence. A willingness to stop and look at what is right in front of us, the way that child looked at that fish, with nothing between them but wonder. There is another story, a small and gentle one, about a beloved artist who spent many years creating beautiful books for children. The artist's drawings were full of wild, joyful creatures, the kind of drawings that children could stare at for hours, finding new things every time they looked. Over the years, many children wrote to this artist, and the artist always wrote back. Sometimes quickly, sometimes with great care. It was one of the things that brought the most joy, this quiet conversation with children who had been touched by the work. One day, a letter arrived from a young boy. It was a simple card with a small drawing on the front, the kind of drawing a child makes with crayons, bright and lopsided and full of heart. There was something about it that made the artist stop and pay attention. It was not technically good, of course. It was a child's drawing, but it had that thing that the best art has, a kind of honesty, a feeling of someone putting their whole self onto the page without holding anything back. The artist was so charmed by it that, instead of dashing off a quick reply, the artist sat down and carefully drew one of those beloved wild characters, drawn just for this one child, on a small card. It was a real drawing. The kind of thing that might one day be worth a great deal of money. But the artist did not think about that. The artist just thought about the boy and his crayons and drew something with the same kind of wholehearted attention the boy had given. A few weeks later, a letter arrived from the boy's mother. "Thank you so much for your reply," she wrote. "My son loved your card so much that he ate it. He ate it. He did not frame it. He did not save it. He did not understand that it was an original drawing by someone well known. He simply loved it so much that the only thing his small body knew to do was to take it in completely, to make it part of himself." The artist years later called this one of the finest compliments ever received. There is something here about what it means to really receive something, not to analyze it, not to categorize it, not to decide what it is worth or where it belongs, but to simply take it in, fully, the way a child takes in the world, with the whole body, with the whole heart. The Zen tradition calls this beginner's mind. It is the mind that has not yet decided what everything means. The mind that meets the world without a thick layer of opinions and conclusions sitting on top of it. It is not childish. It is childlike. There is a big difference. Most of us, as we get older, gradually lose touch with this. We stop saying wow because we think we already know how things are. We stop being amazed, not because the world has become less amazing, but because we have covered it with so many explanations that we can no longer see it clearly. A teacher once said that every explanation is a little coffin for wonder. Not that explanations are bad. They have their place. But when we explain everything and wonder at nothing, we lose something precious. We lose the aliveness that comes from simply not knowing. Children have not done this yet. When a child says awesome, they mean it. They are reporting something true. And if we listen carefully, we might remember that they are right. It really is awesome. All of it. The rain on the window. The color of an autumn leaf. A strange golden fish with one enormous eye. The sound of laughter between strangers. It is all extraordinary. We have just forgotten how to notice. And the beautiful thing is that this capacity for wonder has not gone anywhere. It is still inside us, the way the sea is still connected to the lake by that quiet stream. We do not need to become children again. We just need to let go, even for a moment, of our insistence that we already know what everything means. The Buddha taught that mindfulness is, at its heart, a kind of remembering. Not remembering the past, but remembering to be present. Remembering to look. Remembering that this moment, this one right here, is not a rehearsal for something more important. This is it. This is the life. And when we do remember, even briefly, something opens up. We feel more alive, more tender, more connected to everything around us. Not because anything has changed, but because we have finally stopped long enough to notice what was always there. The wonder is not something we need to create. It is not something we need to earn or achieve. It is already here, woven into the most ordinary fabric of our days. It is in the sound of rain that we usually talk over, in the face of someone we love that we usually glance past, in the taste of a simple meal that we usually eat without tasting. All we need to do is stop and look and let ourselves be surprised. There is a line, often shared in the Zen tradition, that says, "When you realize nothing is lacking, the whole world belongs to you." Nothing is lacking. Not right now. Not in this breath. The whole world is already here, quietly offering itself. We just have to be willing to receive it. The way a child receives a drawing, completely, with everything they have. Let us pause for a moment here. Notice your breathing. Notice the quiet. And when you feel ready, we will continue together. Have you ever arrived somewhere and realized you have no memory of the journey? You were walking, or riding, or driving, and your body was doing all the right things, but you were not really there. You were somewhere else entirely, lost in a conversation that had not happened yet, replaying something that happened this morning, running through a list, worrying about next week, and then suddenly, you arrive, and you think, where was I just now? This is how most of us spend most of our days. We are here, but we are not here. Our bodies move through the world, but our minds are somewhere else, spinning stories, sorting through memories, rehearsing futures that may never come. If we are honest about it, it is a little startling how much of our lives we spend away. There is a way of looking at this that comes from the contemplative traditions, and it goes something like this. Imagine that your awareness is like a wide open sky, clear and spacious and always present. That is what is actually here, underneath everything. Just this open, quiet awareness. Now imagine that your mind is like a projector, and it is constantly casting images and stories and thoughts onto that open sky, the way a film projector throws light onto a screen. The images are vivid. The stories are compelling. Some of them are exciting. Some of them are worrying. Some of them are just interesting enough to keep us watching. And here is the thing. We get so absorbed in these projections that we forget about the sky entirely. We forget that behind all the flickering images, there is something vast and still and open. We mistake the movie for reality. We think the stories are the world. The Buddha put it simply. He said, "We are what we think. All that we are arises with our thoughts. With our thoughts, we make the world. We make the world. Not the actual world of trees and rain and birdsong, but the world we live in most of the time, the one made of opinions and worries and plans and old memories. That world is made of thought, and most of the time, we do not even notice we are living in it." There is a story about a person who went on a day-long silent retreat. They were not new to sitting quietly. They had done it before. But this particular day, something different was asked of them. The person leading the retreat suggested that, for the entire day, whenever they noticed themselves drifting into thought, they gently let go and come back to whatever was actually happening around them. Not thinking about sounds, but hearing them. Not thinking about how their body felt, but feeling it. Just staying with the direct, living experience of being here. At first, the person did not think much of it. They had an active mind and rather enjoyed their thoughts. During the morning, as they sat in the quiet hall, they noticed all sorts of interesting ideas coming and going. Observations, memories, creative connections. Their mind felt alive and engaged. During a break, they mentioned this to the person leading the retreat. "There are a lot of interesting thoughts happening," they said. "Good ones, actually. Creative ones. Is it really necessary to let them all go? Why not spend some time in them and some time out of them?" The retreat leader smiled gently. "You could do that," they said. "But just for today, as an experiment, what if you let them all go? Every one of them. Even the good ones. even the brilliant ones. Just for one day, see what happens when you stay with what is actually here. The person thought about this. It felt like a big ask, but something about the invitation was curious enough that they decided to try. And so for the rest of the day, every time a thought arose, they noticed it and gently let it go. Every time their mind started spinning a story or an analysis or a plan, they softened their attention and came back to the breath, or the sounds in the room, or the feeling of their feet on the floor. By the afternoon, something had shifted. The quality of the day had changed. Sounds seemed clearer. The light through the windows seemed more vivid. They could feel the texture of the air on their skin. They noticed small things they would normally walk right past. The way a shadow moved across a wall. The distant sound of water somewhere outside. The feeling of their own heartbeat. At one point during the afternoon, they went outside for a walking period, and they noticed the trees. They had walked past these same trees at the beginning of the day without giving them a second glance. But now, without the constant chatter of the mind layering stories on top of everything, the trees looked different, more present, more vivid, as if the trees had always been this alive, and it was only now, with the volume of thinking turned down, that they could actually see it. When the day ended, and everyone gathered to share what they had noticed, this person spoke up. It was exciting, they said. And then, after a pause, but also a little frightening. What was frightening about it? The leader asked. The control, they said. When I am in my thoughts, I feel like I am in charge. I can direct things. I can edit. I can plan. But when I let all of that go, there was no control at all. Things were just happening. And I was just here, watching. Yes, said the leader, gently. That is what it is like to be alive. This is one of the tender truths of our situation. We use our thinking as a way of feeling safe. If we can plan well enough, maybe nothing bad will happen. If we can figure things out, maybe we can protect ourselves. If we can stay one step ahead, maybe we will be okay. And there is nothing wrong with this. It is a very human thing to do. But it comes at a cost. The cost is that while we are busy planning and figuring and staying ahead, we miss what is actually here. There is a story about a person who was walking to work one morning, same route they took every day, head full of the usual things. What they needed to do when they got there. A conversation from the night before that was still bothering them. A vague worry about something that might or might not happen next month. And then, for no particular reason, they stopped. Right there, on the pavement. Something had caught their attention, though they could not have said what it was. Maybe a sound. Maybe a shift in the light. They just stopped. And for a moment, they heard birds. They had not noticed any birds in months, maybe years, on this walk. But there they were, singing away in the trees that lined the street. Trees they walked past every single day without looking up. They stood there for maybe 30 seconds, just listening, and something inside them softened. The worries did not disappear exactly, but they got quieter, less urgent, like someone had turned the volume down. And in the space that opened up, there was this simple feeling of being alive, of being here, of standing on a street on a spring morning with birds singing overhead. 30 seconds. That is all it took. We miss so much. We miss the sound of rain at night. We have all heard rain before, of course. But have you really listened to it lately? Have you let yourself just lie there and hear it, without thinking about whether you close the windows or what the weather will be like tomorrow? Just the sound of it, the way it comes and goes, the way it taps and whispers and occasionally falls silent before starting up again. We miss the feel of our own moods, the gentle shifts in how we are doing from hour to hour. We miss the look on someone's face when they are about to say something important. We miss the taste of our food, the temperature of the air, the way our body feels when it is tired or rested or somewhere in between. We miss our own tenderness. That is perhaps the quietest loss of all. Underneath all the thinking and planning, there is a part of us that is incredibly soft and open and alive. But we rarely get there because the thoughts are so constant that they drown it out. The Buddha once said, "Do not dwell in the past. Do not dream of the future. Concentrate the mind on the present moment." It sounds so simple, and yet it may be the most radical thing any of us ever attempts. There is a Zen saying, "When the mind is still, the whole universe surrenders." It does not mean we have to stop thinking forever. That would not be possible, and it would not be the point. Thoughts are a beautiful part of being human. We can create with them. We can solve problems. We can imagine and dream and connect ideas in ways that no other creature on earth can do. But thoughts are a tool. They are not meant to be the whole of our experience. And somewhere along the way, for most of us, the tool took over. The servant became the master. We started living in our thoughts instead of using them, and we forgot that there was a world outside the projector's beam. Think about it this way. If you spent your entire day looking at photographs of the ocean, you would know a great deal about what the ocean looks like. But you would not know what it feels like to stand in the surf. You would not know the smell of the salt air, or the sound of the waves at night, or the feeling of sand under your feet. The photographs are useful. They are beautiful, even. But they are not the ocean. Our thoughts are like that. They are snapshots. Still images of a reality that is actually alive and moving and full of depth. And when we live in the snapshots, we miss the living thing. The practice, if you could even call it that, is very simple. It is just noticing. Noticing when the projector is running. Noticing when you have drifted off into a story. And then, gently, like waking up from a light sleep, turning your attention back to what is here. The sounds, the breath, the feeling of being alive in this body, in this moment, in this place. You do not have to do it perfectly. You do not have to do it all the time. Even a few seconds of it, scattered through a busy day, can change the quality of your life in ways you might not expect. Because what you find when you step out of the movie even briefly is that the sky is still there. The vast, open, quiet awareness that has always been behind the stories. It has not gone anywhere. It has been here the whole time, patient and still, waiting for you to look up. Let us rest here for a moment. Just breathing. Just this. And whenever you are ready, we will go on together. There is an old story, one of the most famous in the Zen tradition, about a scholar who traveled a great distance to visit a well-known teacher. The scholar was a person of considerable learning, many years of study, many books read, many lectures given. By the time they arrived at the teacher's small house at the edge of a forest, they had been traveling for days and were eager to show what they knew. The teacher welcomed the scholar warmly and invited them to sit down. "Let me make you some tea," the teacher said. While the water heated, the scholar began to talk. They talked about the texts they had studied, the philosophies they had mastered, the insights they had gained through years of careful thought. They spoke at length and with great confidence, filling the small room with words and ideas. The teacher listened, nodding from time to time, and then began to pour the tea. The scholar kept talking. The teacher kept pouring. The cup filled. The tea reached the brim. And still, the teacher kept pouring. Tea spilled over the edge, across the table, onto the floor. "Stop," said the scholar, startled. "The cup is full. It cannot hold any more." The teacher set the pot down gently. "Yes," the teacher said, "you are like this cup. You are so full of what you already know that there is no room for anything new. If you want to learn something here, you must first empty your cup." This is such a simple teaching, and yet it is one of the hardest things to do. We spend our whole lives filling our cups. We collect opinions and beliefs and explanations. We gather facts. We form views about how the world works, who people are, what life means. And over time, all of this knowing becomes very dense and very heavy. It becomes the ground we stand on, the walls of the house we live in. And here is the gentle difficulty. The more we know, or think we know, the less room there is for surprise, for wonder, for the kind of fresh, open encounter with life that we were talking about earlier, the encounter that children have so naturally and that most of us gradually lose. The Zen tradition has a phrase for the alternative. They call it beginner's mind. It is the mind that approaches each moment as if for the first time. The mind that does not already know what is going to happen, what someone is going to say, what this experience is going to feel like. It is open and curious and a little bit humble. And it is not just a nice idea. It is actually the doorway to something quite freeing. Let us explore another story. There was a person who was very good at their work. Over many years, they had built up a reputation as someone who had answers. Colleagues came to them with questions. Friends came to them with problems. They were the one everyone turned to when things needed to be figured out. And for a long time, this felt good. There is a real satisfaction in being the one who knows. A sense of solidity, of usefulness, of standing on firm ground. But over time, something began to change. The person noticed that conversations had become a little predictable. People would start talking, and before they were halfway through a sentence, the person already knew what they were going to say, already had a response forming, already had the answer lined up. It was efficient, but it was not alive. One evening, this person was sitting with a close friend, someone they had known for many years. They were at a kitchen table. The tea had gone cold. The friend was telling them about something difficult they were going through. Something tangled and painful that did not have a clear answer. And as usual, the person felt the familiar machinery start up inside, sorting through possible responses, looking for the right advice, the right frame, the right fix. But this time, for whatever reason, they stopped. Something in them just gave up trying to be helpful in the usual way. They did not offer an answer. They did not suggest a book or a strategy or a different way of looking at it. They just sat there with their cold tea and their friend and the silence. "I do not know what to say," they said after a long pause. "I have been sitting here trying to come up with something useful, and I just do not know. I do not have an answer for this one." The friend looked at them, and something in the friend's face changed, softened. The tension around their eyes eased. Their shoulders dropped a little. "Thank you," the friend said, quietly. "That is the most helpful thing anyone has said to me in weeks." "Really?" the person said, surprised. "But I did not say anything." "I know," the friend said. "That is why it helped. Everyone else keeps trying to fix it. You are the first person who just sat here with me." It was a strange moment. Nothing had been solved. No advice had been given. Nothing had moved forward in any practical way. And yet something had happened between them that was deeper and truer than any solution. By saying, "I do not know," the person had stepped out of the role of expert and into something more honest, more human, more connected. They sat together for a while longer after that, not talking much, just being there. And the kitchen, which was really just a small, ordinary kitchen, felt somehow larger, more peaceful, as if the room itself had been waiting for someone to stop filling it with answers. There is a saying in the Buddhist tradition, "Not knowing is most intimate." When we do not know, we are close to things. When we have it all figured out, we are actually far away, up in the tower of our conclusions, looking down at life through a small window. But when we let go of our knowing, we come back down to the ground. We stand next to each other again. We feel the weather on our skin. There is a lovely exchange in the Zen tradition that captures this beautifully. A student went to a teacher and asked, "What happens to us when this life is over?" The teacher thought for a moment and said, "I really do not know." The student was surprised. "But you are a great teacher," the student said. "Surely you must know." The teacher smiled and said, "I am. But I have not been through that particular door yet. There is something so refreshing about this. No grand theory. No comforting certainty. Just honest presence with the mystery of it all. And that honesty, that willingness to simply stand in front of the unknown and say, 'I do not know,' is not a weakness. It is actually a kind of courage, a kind of strength. Because it means we are no longer hiding behind our answers. We are here, fully present, with the beautiful uncertainty of being alive. We are often afraid of not knowing, and that makes sense. Our sense of who we are is built, in large part, out of what we think we know. Our opinions, our beliefs, our conclusions about how things are. These are the bricks in the wall of our identity. And when they start to soften or fall away, it can feel unsteady, like the ground beneath us is shifting. Think of it this way. Imagine you have been living in a house for a very long time. The walls are solid. The roof keeps out the rain. You know where everything is. And then one day, very gently, someone starts opening the windows, one by one, and then they open the door. And then, very carefully, they start removing a few of the walls. Your first feeling might be fear. The walls were keeping you safe. Without them, anything could come in. The wind, the rain, the unknown. But your second feeling, if you stay with it, might be something else entirely. Because now you can see the sky. Now you can feel the breeze. Now the bird you have been hearing through the wall is right there, sitting on a branch, close enough to touch. The house was protecting you, yes, but it was also keeping you from the world. What the contemplative traditions keep pointing to, very gently and very patiently, is that what we find when the walls come down is not emptiness, not chaos, not nothing. What we find is space. Space to breathe. Space to see things we could not see before. Space for wonder to come back in, like sunlight through an open window. The Buddha spoke often about emptiness, and in his teaching it was never something cold or frightening. It was more like the emptiness of a bowl that is ready to receive, or the emptiness of a clear sky, which is not empty at all, but full of light and air and possibility. When we empty our cup, even a little, we make room. Room for this moment to be what it actually is, rather than what we have already decided it should be. Room for the people in our lives to surprise us. Room for life itself to come through in its full, mysterious richness. There is a gentleness to this that is worth noticing. We do not have to throw away everything we know. We do not have to pretend we have no experience or no understanding. We simply hold it all a little more lightly, like a bird sitting in an open hand rather than a closed fist. The bird is still there. We can still feel it, but it is free to move. Free to fly away if it needs to. Free to come back. That is what not knowing feels like, when we really let ourselves settle into it. It is not confusion. It is not ignorance. It is a kind of openness, a willingness to say, I am here. I do not have all the answers, and that is perfectly fine. In fact, it might be the most honest and the most alive we have ever been. There is a line from the Zen tradition that says, in the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities. In the expert's mind, there are few. Tonight, perhaps, we can all be beginners. Just for a little while. We can set down what we know, the way we might set down a heavy bag at the end of a long walk. Not throwing it away, just letting it rest beside us while we catch our breath and look around at where we actually are. And what we might find, in that open and unhurried looking, is that the world is far more interesting than any of our ideas about it. And that the not knowing, which we were so afraid of, is actually the gentlest and most welcoming place we have ever been. Let us rest here for a moment, just breathing. Nowhere to go, nothing to figure out. And when you are ready, we will continue together. We have been talking tonight about what happens when we soften our grip, when we let go of our stories about each other, our attachment to our thoughts, our need to have everything figured out. And each time we let go of something, we seem to find more space, more room to breathe, more room to simply be here. Now let us turn that openness towards something a little bigger. Let us turn it toward the world itself. Because here is something wonderful. The more closely anyone looks at the nature of things, the more they look at how this world actually works, the more mysterious it becomes. Not less. More. Every question that gets answered seems to open 3 more. Every door that opens reveals a hallway full of doors no one has opened yet. And rather than being frustrating, there is something deeply restful about this. It means we can stop pretending we are supposed to have it all figured out. Nobody does. Nobody ever has. And that is not a problem. It might be the most beautiful thing about being alive. Let us sit with a few things that are genuinely astonishing if we let ourselves feel them. Right now, as you lie here listening, light from distant stars is arriving at the earth. Some of that light has been traveling through space for longer than we can really comprehend. It left its star when the universe was still young, and it has been quietly crossing the darkness ever since, patient and steady, until tonight, when it finally arrives here. Think about that for a moment. That light has been on its way for longer than there have been people, longer than there have been trees. And tonight, it reaches a world where someone is lying in the dark, listening to these words, breathing softly. There is something about that image that is almost too beautiful to hold. And here is something else. Something that has puzzled and amazed the people who study the very smallest things in the world. When they observe the tiniest particles of matter, the ones so small that you could fit billions of them on the head of a pin, they find something that no one expected. The act of looking at these particles changes how they behave. The observer and the observed are not separate. They are tangled up together in a way that no one fully understands. What this means, put very simply, is that the world is not just sitting out there, fixed and solid, waiting for us to look at it. The world and the one who looks at it are part of the same thing, connected, woven together. The seer and the seen making each other up as they go. There is a story about a teacher who used to take students outside on clear nights to look at the stars. One evening, a student was gazing up at the sky, overwhelmed by how many stars there were, how far away they seemed, how small it all made them feel. "I feel so tiny," the student said. "So insignificant. How can any of this matter when the universe is so enormous?" The teacher was quiet for a while. Then the teacher said, "Who is looking at the stars right now?" "I am," said the student. "And who is feeling amazed?" "I am." "Then you are not tiny," the teacher said, gently. "You are the place where the universe has learned to feel amazement. Without you, the stars would have no one to shine for." They stood there for a long time after that, neither of them saying anything, just looking up. And the sky, which had seemed so vast and so indifferent just moments before, began to feel like something else entirely. Not distant, not cold, but intimate, close, as if the stars and the one watching them were part of the same quiet conversation. Here is another one. Scientists have discovered that if you take the smallest building blocks of matter and cool them down, make them very, very still, something remarkable happens. They stop behaving as separate, individual things. They begin to merge. They soften into each other and become something new, something shared, as if, in deep stillness, the boundaries between things dissolve and what remains is a kind of unity. Stillness creates connection. That is not a spiritual teaching, though it sounds like one. That is something observed in a laboratory, and yet it echoes what the contemplative traditions have been saying for thousands of years. That when we become still, when we stop the busy movement of our thinking and our doing, we begin to feel our connection to everything around us. The boundaries soften, the separateness fades, and what is left is something whole. The Buddha described this beautifully. He said, as a net is made up of a series of ties, so everything in this world is connected by a series of ties. If anyone thinks that the mesh of a net is an independent, isolated thing, they are mistaken. The net is made of ties, and so is the world, and so are we. There is one more thing worth sitting with. For a very long time, the people who study the universe have known that something does not quite add up. When they measure how much matter should be present to hold the galaxies in their shapes, to keep the stars turning in their slow, enormous circles, they find that most of it is missing. Not a small amount. The vast majority of what must be there, what has to be there for any of this to work, is something we cannot see, cannot touch, cannot measure, cannot detect with any instrument we have built so far. It is called dark matter, and it makes up most of the universe, most of everything, and we have no idea what it is. There is something strangely comforting about that. The universe, in its infinite wisdom, is mostly made of something we cannot understand. The ground we stand on, the stars we see, the bodies we live in, all of this is just a small fraction of what is actually here. The rest is mystery. Pure, quiet, beautiful mystery. And rather than feeling lost in that, there is a way of resting in it, of letting it hold us, the way the ocean holds the fish. We do not need to understand the ocean to swim in it. We do not need to understand the mystery to live in it. We just need to stop insisting that we should. A teacher once drew a small circle on a board. "This is what we know," the teacher said. Then the teacher gestured to everything outside the circle, the whole room, the sky beyond it, the world beyond that. "And this is what we do not know." Then the teacher said something that stayed with the students for a long time. The more the circle grows, the more it touches the unknown. So the more you learn, the more you realize how much there is that you will never understand. Knowledge does not shrink the mystery. It makes the mystery bigger, and this is not cause for despair. It is cause for wonder. It means the world will never run out of things to astonish us. It means there will always be more to discover, more to feel, more to be quietly amazed by. No matter how long we live, no matter how much we learn, the mystery will always be larger than we are. And we can rest in that. We can let it hold us like warm water. We can float in it. There is a kind of poetry in questions that have no answers. Not the frustrating kind, the kind that keeps you up at night, but the other kind, the kind that makes you quiet, the kind that opens something up inside you rather than closing it down. When did smoke first learn to rise? Where do rivers think they are going? What does the rain remember? How does a seed know which way is up? What do the roots of trees say to each other in the dark? Where do birds go when the sky turns grey? You can feel what happens when you sit with questions like these. The mind reaches for an answer, and then, when no answer comes, something else takes its place. A kind of quiet, a kind of softness. The machinery of figuring things out slows down, and in the gap, there is just this gentle feeling of being alive in a world that is far stranger and more wonderful than we usually allow ourselves to notice. This is what the contemplative traditions mean when they talk about resting in the mystery, not trying to solve it, not being frustrated by it, just letting it hold us, the way music holds us, when we stop trying to understand it and simply listen. There is a teaching that comes from a book about the natural world. And it says something that has stayed with many people who have heard it. It says that over billions of years, the universe has slowly developed the capacity to look at itself. That through the long, patient unfolding of life, through all the countless forms it has taken, the universe has gradually created beings who can turn around and say, "Oh, look at this. We are that. You and I. We are the part of the universe that can appreciate what is happening. We are the ocean, becoming aware of its own waves." Think about what that means, gently, without trying to fully grasp it. You do not have to understand it. You just have to feel it. Right now, in this moment, the universe is listening to itself. Through your ears, through your awareness, through whatever it is inside you that can hear these words and feel something in response. You are not watching the universe from the outside, the way you might watch a film. You are part of it. You are it, looking at itself, feeling itself, wondering about itself. Every moment of wonder you have ever experienced, every time you have looked at the night sky, or been moved by music, or felt your heart open in the presence of someone you love, that was the universe appreciating itself. Through you. That is not a small thing. That is an astonishing thing. And you do not have to do anything to earn it. It is simply what you are. The Zen tradition has a way of pointing to this that is, as always, very simple. A teacher once said, "Sitting quietly, doing nothing, spring comes, and the grass grows by itself." We do not make the grass grow. We do not make the stars move. We do not make our own hearts beat. Something is doing all of this, and it has been doing it for a very long time, with extraordinary patience and care and creativity. And our part in it, our small and beautiful part, is simply to be here, to notice, to wonder, to appreciate, not to figure it out, just to be present with it. And when we do that, when we let go of our need to explain and just allow ourselves to be amazed, something happens. The distance between us and the world gets smaller. The gap closes. We stop feeling like strangers passing through and start feeling like what we actually are, a part of this, a belonging part, a loved part. There is a Zen saying, "You are not a drop in the ocean. You are the entire ocean in a drop." Let that settle. You do not have to understand it. Just let it rest somewhere inside you, like a warm stone placed gently in your palm. Let us rest here. Nowhere to go. Nothing to solve. Just this quiet moment, held in the middle of a very old and very beautiful mystery. And when you are ready, we will go on. Everything changes. That is one of the simplest and most important things the Buddha ever taught. He did not say it as a warning. He did not say it with sadness. He said it the way you might point out the sky. Just this. Look, everything changes. The seasons turn. The light shifts from morning to evening and back again. Our moods come and go like weather. The people we love grow and change, and so do we. Nothing stays the same for long. Not the good things. Not the difficult things. Not even this breath, which is already different from the one before it. And here is the gentle truth at the heart of this teaching. We already know it. Somewhere deep down, We have always known it. But most of the time, we live as if we did not. We hold on. We try to keep things the way they are. We grip tightly to what we love, to what feels safe, to what we understand. And that gripping, kind as its intentions are, is what makes us tired. There is an old saying that goes, "You cannot stop the waves, but you can learn to surf." It is such a simple image, and it captures something about our lives that is hard to put any other way. We cannot stop the waves. We cannot make life hold still. We cannot prevent things from changing, from moving, from being unpredictable and sometimes overwhelming. The waves are going to come whether we want them to or not. But we can change our relationship to them. Most of us, if we are honest, tend to do one of two things with the waves of our experience. Either we try to control them, which is exhausting and never quite works, or we try to avoid them, which means shutting down and going numb. Neither one feels very good. Neither one is very alive. But there is a third way, and it is the way the contemplative traditions have been pointing toward for a very long time. It is the way of staying open, of feeling the waves fully, of letting them move through us, without losing our balance. Not fighting, not running, just being here, with whatever is here, and trusting that we are large enough to hold it. The Buddha described this quality as equanimity. It is a word that sounds formal, but it really just means balance. The ability to stay steady and open, even when things are moving and shifting around us. Not rigid, not tight, but balanced, like a surfer on a board, moving with the water, adjusting, responding, staying upright not through force but through a kind of relaxed attention. There is something that happens when we start paying closer attention to our experience, when we really begin to drop beneath the usual layer of thoughts and into the direct feeling of being alive. The world becomes much more vivid. Colors seem brighter. Sounds seem more clear. We feel things more keenly. The warmth of sunlight on our skin, the cool of a breeze, the way our chest tightens when we are nervous, the way it opens when we are at ease. This is not something we are adding. It is what was always there, underneath the busy chatter of the mind. We are simply noticing it for the first time, the way you might notice the stars when the city lights go out. And it can be beautiful, but it can also be a lot. Throughout history, there have been people, creative and sensitive souls, artists and poets and musicians who seem to have lived closer to this raw, unfiltered experience than most. They had access to tremendous aliveness, to a vividness of feeling that most people only glimpse from time to time. And this access gave their work a depth and a beauty that continues to move us. But many of them also found it overwhelming. The waves were powerful, and they did not always know how to stay balanced in the middle of them. They were tossed about by the very aliveness that made their work so extraordinary. This is why the practice of awareness, of mindfulness, matters so much. It is not about dulling the experience. It is not about pulling back from the vividness of life. It is about developing a kind of spaciousness inside ourselves, a calm and caring awareness that can hold it all. The beauty and the difficulty, the joy and the sorrow, the waves and the stillness beneath them. The Zen tradition sometimes calls this big mind. Not big as in clever or impressive, big as in spacious, room enough for everything. And here is what we discover when we do learn to ride the waves, even a little. We discover that we are not separate from each other. This is one of the most consistent findings of anyone who has ever sat quietly for long enough. The boundaries we draw between ourselves and the world, between ourselves and other people, between the inside and the outside, begin to soften. We start to sense that we are part of something woven together, something interconnected in ways we usually cannot see but can sometimes feel. The Buddha spoke about this often. He taught that nothing exists entirely on its own. Everything arises in relationship to everything else. A flower depends on the rain, the sun, the soil, the bee. A feeling depends on what came before it and what comes after. A thought depends on every thought that preceded it. We are not isolated beings moving through a world of separate things. We are a web. We are a net. We are part of each other. Let us explore a story about this. There was a person who worked with families during times of great transition, times when someone they loved was preparing to leave this world. It was quiet, tender work, and it brought this person close to some of the most honest moments a family can share. One day, this person was sitting with the grown children of an elderly man. The family had gathered from different places, and they were spending these days close to their father, taking turns sitting with him, holding his hand, telling him stories from when they were small. That afternoon, the children received some unexpected and difficult news about another member of their family, someone who had been involved in an accident far away. They gathered in the hallway to talk it over quietly, not wanting to worry their father. He seemed to be resting peacefully, and they thought it best to keep this to themselves for now. After a while, they went back into the room, and as they came through the door, their father looked up at them and said, gently, "Do you not have something to tell me?" They looked at each other, confused. "How could you know?" one of them asked. Their father smiled, softly. "I just know," he said. "I have been feeling it." The children were astonished. There was no way he could have overheard their conversation. No way anyone could have told him. And yet he knew. What happened next was very quiet and very beautiful. The father called each of his children to his side, one by one. He spoke a few words to each of them. Simple words. Words of love and gratitude and encouragement. The kind of things a person saves for when they matter most. And then he rested his head back and closed his eyes, and the room went very still. The person who witnessed this said later that it changed the way they understood connection. That in those final, open moments, the boundaries between people seemed to thin until they were almost transparent. As if the love that had always been there between this family was finally able to flow without anything in the way. We do not have to wait for extraordinary circumstances to feel this kind of connection. It is available to us in small ways, every day. In the moment when you laugh at the same thing as a stranger. In the moment when you feel what someone else is feeling without them saying a word. In the quiet understanding that passes between old friends who do not need to explain themselves. Have you ever been in a room with someone, not talking, not doing anything in particular, and felt completely at peace? Not because of anything that was happening, but because of the simple fact of being together. That is the web, making itself felt. That is connection, showing up in its quietest and most ordinary form. Or have you ever walked through a forest, or along a river, or sat in a garden, and felt for just a moment that you belonged there. Not as a visitor, not as someone passing through, but as a part of it, as natural and as welcome as the trees and the water and the stones. That is the same thing, the same softening of boundaries, the same quiet recognition that we are not separate from the world. We are made of it. We are woven into it. We always have been. The web is always there. We are always part of it. We just forget most of the time because we are busy being separate, busy being in our own thoughts, our own worries, our own small and carefully maintained lake. But every now and then, something breaks through. A moment of shared wonder, like the golden fish. A moment of honest presence, like saying, "I do not know." A moment of letting go, like the wise fish turning toward the stream. And in those moments, we remember, oh, I am not alone in this. I never was. There is a line, sometimes shared among practitioners, that captures this. It goes, the arrows of shared impermanence. We are all here together, just for a little while. All of us moving through this astonishing, temporary, ever-changing life. And that shared tenderness, that shared fragility, is not something to be afraid of. It is what connects us. It is the very thing that makes love possible. So, what does it mean to learn to surf? It means staying open. It means feeling the waves of life as they come, not trying to stop them or control them, but also not letting them carry us away. It means remembering, again and again, that we are not just the waves. We are the ocean. The waves are our moods, our thoughts, our worries, our joys, our sorrows. They rise and they fall. They are beautiful and sometimes difficult, but they are not the whole of what we are. Beneath the waves, there is something deeper, something that does not come and go, a quiet awareness that has been with us since the very beginning. It was there when we were children. It is here now. It will be here tomorrow. It does not age. It does not tire. It simply holds everything, gently and patiently, the way the ocean holds its waves. We do not have to earn this. We do not have to achieve it. We just have to remember it. And the remembering is the practice. The remembering is the path. The Buddha said, "Peace comes from within. Do not seek it without. It has always been here. Right here, in the deepest part of you, quiet, steady, and endlessly wide." Let us pause, feel whatever is here. Let it be exactly as it is. And when you are ready, we will come together for the last part of our journey. So here we are. We have traveled a long way together tonight, through lakes and oceans, through stories about people who could not see each other clearly and then learned how, through golden fish and empty cups and movie projectors and starlight that has been crossing the darkness for longer than we can imagine, through waves and stillness and the web that holds us all together. And all of it, every story, every teaching, every quiet reflection has been pointing to the same simple thing. This moment, right here, right now, not a moment somewhere in the future when things will finally be sorted out. Not a moment in the past when things were better or worse or different. This one, the one you are in, the one that is happening as you hear these words. The Buddha said, "The trouble is, you think you have time." It is such a gentle thing to say, and yet it carries the whole teaching inside it. We put things off. We wait for the right moment. We assume there will always be another chance, another day, another conversation, another sunset. And there might be. But the only one we can be sure of is this one. Let us explore one more story tonight. There was a person who had a dog. Not a particularly special dog as far as dogs go. A friendly, happy creature with warm eyes and a tail that never stopped moving. The kind of dog that greets every morning as if it were the first morning that had ever happened. Every evening, the person and the dog would go for a walk. Same route, same neighborhood, same streets they had walked 100 times before. And every evening the person would spend most of the walk somewhere else. Thinking about work, replaying a conversation from earlier in the day, worrying about something that might happen next week, planning dinner, running through lists. The body was walking, but the mind was far away. The dog, meanwhile, was having the time of its life. Every smell was fascinating. Every leaf that blew across the path was an event. A squirrel on a fence was cause for pure, unbridled joy. A puddle was a gift. Another dog across the street was the most exciting thing that had ever occurred in the history of the world. The person would tug the leash gently. "Come on," they would say. "We need to keep moving." But the dog would look up at them with those warm, patient eyes, as if to say, "What are you talking about? We are already here. This is where everything is happening. Right here. Right now. Can you not smell it?" One evening, something shifted. The person had been having a particularly busy week. Their mind was especially loud, especially crowded, especially far from where their feet were actually walking. And then, without any particular reason, they stopped. The dog stopped too, looked up, wagged its tail once, slowly, as if to say, "Oh good, you are back." And the person stood there on the pavement and, for the first time in what felt like a very long time, actually looked around. The sky was doing something extraordinary. The clouds had caught the last of the light and were glowing in shades they did not have names for. The air smelled like cut grass and something sweet from a garden nearby. A bird was singing from a rooftop, clear and unhurried. It had all been here the whole time. Every evening, on every walk. This beauty, this vividness, this ordinary, breathtaking aliveness. It had been here, and they had been somewhere else. The dog leaned against their leg. "You have been trying to tell me this the whole time, haven't you?" the person said. The dog wagged its tail. There is something that animals seem to understand that we have to keep relearning. They do not live in the past. They do not project into the future. They are simply here, fully and completely, in whatever moment they find themselves in. We are different, of course. We have these wonderful, complicated minds that can remember and imagine and plan and dream. And those are beautiful capacities. But they come with a cost. The cost is that we can lose the present moment entirely. We can live our whole lives one step removed from actually being here. A Zen teacher once said, "When walking, just walk. When eating, just eat. When sitting, just sit." It sounds almost too simple. But try it. Try, even for a moment, to just do what you are doing. without commentary, without analysis, without the mind running its usual background noise. Just this. Just what is here. What you might find is that ordinary life, the life you thought you knew so well, is much more vivid and much more tender than you realized. That the cup of tea you drink every morning has a flavor you have never fully tasted. That the face of someone you love has expressions you have never quite noticed. That the sound of wind through a window is something unreasonably beautiful if you actually let yourself hear it. There is a verse, very old, that has been shared among travelers and seekers for centuries. It goes something like this: living, I do not know why. Going, I do not know where. I am amazed that I am so cheerful. When you first hear it, it might sound like a contradiction. How can someone be cheerful when they do not know the answers to the most basic questions? Why am I here? Where am I going? What is the meaning of all this? But the more you sit with it, the more you realize that the cheerfulness does not come in spite of the not knowing. It comes because of it. When we stop insisting that we need to understand everything before we can enjoy it, something wonderful happens. We relax. The weight of all that figuring out, all that trying to make sense of things, all that effortful searching for meaning, it lifts. And what is left is just this. Just life. Just being here. And it turns out that being here, really being here, without needing it to be anything other than what it is enough. More than enough. It is extraordinary. That is the freedom the Buddhist path keeps pointing toward. Not freedom from life. Freedom to live it. To really live it. To taste it and feel it and see it and let it touch us, without the constant filter of our thinking and our worrying and our planning getting in the way. There is a story about a person who was always busy. Not unhappy, exactly. Just always moving. Always on the way to the next thing. The morning was for getting ready for the day. The day was for getting through the work. The evening was for preparing for tomorrow. Everything was a bridge to something else. Nothing was ever just itself. One morning, this person woke up earlier than usual. Not on purpose. They just woke up, and the house was quiet, and the light was still grey and soft. They lay there for a moment, and instead of reaching for their phone or starting to think about the day ahead, they just stayed still. And they noticed the light, how it was coming through the curtains in these soft, pale stripes, how it moved slowly across the ceiling as the minutes passed, how it changed color gradually from grey to gold as the sun came up. They had lived in this room for years. This same light had been doing this same thing every morning, and they had never seen it. Not once. They got up and went to the kitchen, made tea, and instead of drinking it while reading the news or checking messages, they just sat at the table and held the warm cup in their hands. Felt the heat of it, smelled it, took a sip and actually tasted it. It was just tea. Just ordinary tea in an ordinary cup on an ordinary morning. But something about the way they were paying attention made it feel like a gift. Like the morning itself was offering something, and for once, they were actually there to receive it. Later, they told a friend about it. I had the strangest experience this morning, they said. I just sat and drank tea. That is all. And it was one of the most peaceful moments I have had in years. The friend laughed gently. Maybe the peace was always there, the friend said. Maybe you were just too busy to drink it. There is a teaching in the Zen tradition, that the whole of enlightenment can be found in a cup of tea. It sounds like a riddle, but it is not. It is simply saying, if you can be fully here for one sip of tea, you can be fully here for anything. And being fully here is all there is. Let us sit with this for a moment, not as an idea, but as something we can feel. Right now, wherever you are, your body is breathing. You did not have to ask it to. You did not have to plan it or figure it out. It is just happening. Your heart is beating. Again, all on its own. Quietly, steadily, faithfully. It has been doing this your entire life without asking for anything in return. The air around you is a certain temperature. There are sounds, near and far. Maybe the hum of something electrical. Maybe rain. Maybe silence. Maybe the sound of your own breathing, which is perhaps the most intimate sound there is. All of this is here. All of it is happening. Not somewhere else. Not in the future. Right now. And it is not waiting for you to appreciate it. But it does become sweeter when you do. The way a meal becomes more nourishing when you actually taste it. The way music becomes more beautiful when you actually listen. There is a story about a teacher who was known for being remarkably content. Not in a showy way, just quietly, deeply at ease with things as they were. Students would come to this teacher expecting great complexity, expecting elaborate teachings and difficult practices. And instead, the teacher would offer something disarmingly simple. One day, a student asked, "What is the secret of your contentment?" The teacher said, "When I eat, I eat. When I sleep, I sleep." The student frowned. "But everyone does that." "No," said the teacher, gently. "When most people eat, they are thinking about 1,000 other things. When they sleep, they are rehearsing tomorrow or replaying yesterday. They are rarely where they are. I am simply where I am." The student sat with this. It seemed too easy, too ordinary. There had to be something more. "Is that really all?" the student asked. The teacher poured some tea and set it down in front of the student. "Drink this," the teacher said. The student picked up the cup and took a sip, then set it down and waited for the next instruction. "Did you taste it?" the teacher asked. The student paused. They were not sure. They had been so focused on waiting for the teaching that they had barely noticed the tea at all. "Try again," the teacher said. The student picked up the cup. This time they slowed down. They felt the warmth of it in their hands. They noticed the smell rising up from the surface. They took a sip and let it sit on their tongue for a moment before swallowing. "That is the teaching," the teacher said, smiling. "That is everything. Be where you are. The rest takes care of itself." It sounds so simple, and in a way it is. But it is also the work of a lifetime. Not because it is difficult, but because we forget. We forget, and we drift away, and then we remember, and we come back. And then we forget again, and drift again, and come back again. Over and over and over. And that is fine. That is the practice. Not perfection. Just returning. Again and again, with patience and kindness, coming back to where we already are. There is one more small story, a very simple one. There was an old gardener who had tended the same garden for many, many years. The garden was nothing grand, just a small patch behind a modest house, with vegetables and herbs and a few flowers along the edges. Nothing anyone would travel to see. One day, a visitor came by and noticed the gardener kneeling in the soil, very carefully planting a small seedling. The gardener was working slowly, almost tenderly, as if the seedling was something precious. "That is a very young tree," the visitor said. "It will take many years before it gives any fruit. Why plant it now?" The gardener looked up and smiled. "Someone planted the tree I sit under," the gardener said. "I am just doing the same. But you may not be here to see it grow," the visitor said. The gardener pressed the soil gently around the base of the seedling. "That is all right," the gardener said. "I am not planting it for me. I am planting it for the planting." There was something in the way the gardener said this. Something so settled and so peaceful. The visitor stood there for a while, watching the old hands work the soil, and felt something inside them go quiet. That is what it looks like when someone is truly here. Not doing things for what they will lead to. Not measuring the value of a moment by what it will produce. Just being in the moment fully. Planting, because planting is what is here to be done. Breathing, because breathing is what is happening. Living, because living is what this moment is made of. There is a Zen saying, "Before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water." Nothing changes. And everything changes. The tasks are the same. The moments are the same. But the way we meet them is completely different. We meet them with our whole heart. We meet them with our whole attention. And that makes all the difference. The Zen tradition has a beautiful image for the way awareness works. It is the image of a bell. When a bell is struck, the sound goes out, clear and bright. And then, slowly, it fades. The silence comes back. And then the bell is struck again, and the sound goes out again. Our awareness is like that. We wake up to this moment, clear and bright. And then the thoughts come back in, and the sound fades, and we drift off again. And then something calls us back. A sound, a feeling, a breath, and we wake up again. Each time we come back, it is fresh. Each time we notice that we are here, actually here, it is like hearing the bell for the first time. It does not matter how many times we have drifted away. What matters is that we keep coming back, that we keep hearing the bell, that we keep saying yes to this moment, whatever it holds. The Buddha's last words to his students were very simple. He said, "Be a lamp unto yourselves. Work out your own way with diligence." He did not say, "Figure it all out." He did not say, "Get it right." He said, "Keep going. Keep paying attention. Keep coming back." And so that is what we do. We keep coming back to the breath, to the body, to the sound of rain or wind or silence, to the feeling of being alive, right here, right now, in the middle of this vast and beautiful and mysterious life. We do not need to go anywhere else. We do not need to become anyone else. We do not need to wait for something better to come along. Everything we have been looking for is already here. It has always been here. Quietly, patiently, waiting for us to notice. Like starlight that has been traveling toward us for billions of years, finally arriving. Like an ocean that has always been connected to our small lake by a quiet stream. And so, as we come to the end of this part of our journey together, let us rest in something very simple. You have been listening tonight. That is all. Just listening. And yet that listening, that quiet willingness to be here and receive, is itself a kind of practice. You did not have to work for it. You did not have to earn it. You simply showed up, and you stayed, and you let these words and stories wash over you the way the tide washes over stones on a shore. There is a teaching that says the whole path can be summed up in a single word: awareness. Not a special kind of awareness. Not the awareness of someone who has spent decades in a monastery. Just the ordinary, quiet awareness that is here right now, in this room, in this breath, in the soft hum of being alive. It is the awareness that notices the weight of your body resting where it rests. The awareness that hears the silence between sounds. The awareness that knows, without being told, when something is beautiful. You have always had this. It was there when you were very young, before you had words for anything, before you knew what things were called or how they were supposed to work. It was there in the way you looked at the world with wide open eyes, taking everything in without sorting it or judging it or filing it away. It has never left you. It has only been covered over, layer by layer, by all the thoughts and worries and busy plans that life asks of us. But underneath all of that, it is still here, clear and quiet and endlessly patient, waiting. And the lovely thing, the truly lovely thing, is that it does not ask anything of you in return. It does not ask you to be better or calmer or wiser or more spiritual. It does not ask you to sit in any particular way or think any particular thoughts. It simply asks you to notice that it is here. That is all. Just to notice. And tonight, you have been noticing, perhaps without even realizing it. In the moments between stories, in the small silences between words, something inside you has been quietly opening. Like a flower that opens not because anyone told it to, but because the light was there, and the warmth was there, and the time was right. The Buddha once said, "You yourself, as much as anybody in the entire universe, deserve your love and affection." So as you lie here, wherever you are, let that settle. You are not a project to be completed. You are not a problem to be solved. You are a living being, breathing softly in the middle of a vast and tender night, and that is more than enough. That has always been more than enough. The ocean does not try to be the ocean. It simply is. And so are you. Let us rest here for a moment. There is no hurry. Just this breath. Just this quiet. And when you are ready, we will say good night. Tonight, we have journeyed together through still lakes and open seas. We emptied our cup, even just a little, and felt the relief of not needing to know everything. We looked up at the stars and felt, perhaps for just a moment, that the universe was looking back. We learned that the waves of life are not something to fight or to fear, but something we can learn to ride, gently, with balance and care. And we arrived here, at this breath, at this moment, at the quiet discovery that everything we have been searching for has been right here all along. You do not need to hold on to any of this. Let it settle where it needs to settle. Let it go where it needs to go. Like a leaf on moving water, it will find its way. Thank you for being here tonight, for listening, for being open, for being willing to rest in the mystery, even for just a little while. Sleep well, and thank you for joining us here at Sleepy Monk.